The night my front door shook from baseball bats slamming against it, I realized my family wasn't here to talk anymore, they were here to break me. I stood frozen in my hallway, heart pounding, listening to my own brother scream my name like I was his enemy just hours earlier. I had said one word no, and that single word turned my blood family into strangers. They wanted my house, my money, my silence. And they were ready to use fear to take it. Before this story goes any further, hit like, subscribe, and share this because what happened next is something no family should ever do. And no survivor should face alone. My name is Ashley, and for most of my life I was the easy target, the quiet one, the one everyone leaned on when they were broke, angry, or desperate. When my parents mismanaged their finances and buried themselves under $150,000 in debt, they didn't call a bank, they called me, not to ask but to demand. They said selling my house was the right thing, that family sacrifices were non-negotiable. That house wasn't luxury, it was safety. It was the first thing I ever owned without anyone's help. I bought it after years of overtime, skipped vacations, and silent weekends while everyone else lived loud. I never told them how close I came to burnout, how many nights I slept on the floor of my office just to save money. I kept my progress invisible because in my family, success was something they felt entitled to claim. When I refused, the insults came fast. My mother said I was selfish. My father said I owed them for being born. My cousins flooded my phone with messages about family loyalty. Then my brother crossed the line. He laughed and said, "You'll change your mind when we show up." I thought he meant pressure. I didn't know he meant violence. Now I was standing alone in my house. Lights off, watching shadows move past the windows as fists and bats hit. The door again, glass rattled. Someone yelled that I was ruining everyone's life. And in that moment, something inside me snapped, not fear, but clarity. They thought this house was just walls and a deed. They had no idea it was also proof, leverage, and the last mistake they would ever make against me. I didn't open the door. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I stood there in the dark, phone shaking in my hand, listening to my family destroy whatever lie I still believed about them. My uncle's voice cut through the noise, calm and cold, telling the others to make her understand. That's when I realized this wasn't anger. It was a plan. I called the police with one hand while scrolling through old messages with the other. Texts where they admitted the debt wasn't mine. Voice notes where my dad said, "We'll scare her if we have."
T.O.
Screenshots of my brother bragging that the house would be ours soon. I had saved everything without knowing why. Maybe some part of me always knew this day would come. The sirens came fast. Red and blue lights washed over the street. My family scattered like cockroaches, except my brother. He stayed, bat still in his hand, shouting that I had ruined everything. When the police pinned him to the hood of a car, my mother cried and begged them to stop, screaming that this was a family issue. The officer looked at her and said, "Ma'am, this is a felony." By morning, the truth was out. Reports were filed. Statements were taken. And something else happened that my family never expected. The bank froze their accounts. The $150,000. Debt wasn't just mismanagement. It involved forged signatures, my name included. They had tried to use my credit without telling me. That night with the bats wasn't about pressure. It was about panic. While they were busy threatening me, my lawyer was already moving, quietly, efficiently. I had hired him months earlier, after noticing strange credit alerts. I never confronted them. I never warned them. I waited, and now their fear-filled visit had handed us everything we needed. 2 days later, my parents demanded a meeting. No bats this time. Just shaking voices and forced smiles. They said there had been misunderstandings, that stress made people do crazy things. My brother wouldn't look at me. I listened without reacting, because I knew something they didn't. The house they wanted so badly wasn't just mine. It was protected, and the debt they tried to dump on me, it was about to bury them instead. The meeting took place at my parents' dining table, the same place where I used to sit quietly while everyone talked over me. This time, I noticed how empty the room felt. No jokes, no confidence, just fear, hiding behind forced smiles. My mom kept pushing tea toward me like it could erase what happened. My dad talked fast, jumping from excuses to apologies, saying the debt was temporary, that they only needed a little help, that family doesn't. Involve lawyers. I let them talk. I let the silence stretch. Because the more they spoke, the deeper they dug themselves in. My brother finally snapped and said I had overreacted, that calling the police was a betrayal. That's when I slid my phone across the table and played his own voice note, the one where he laughed and said they'd scare me until I signed everything over. His face drained of color. No one spoke after that. I told them calmly that my lawyer already had copies of every message, every threat, every attempt to use my credit. I told them the police report wasn't going away. And then I dropped the real bomb. The house they wanted me to sell? It wasn't just a house anymore. It was tied to a legal structure that made it untouchable without my approval. No forced sale, no leverage. No intimidation. My mom started crying, saying they could lose everything. I reminded her how I felt standing alone in my hallway while bats hit my door. How no one cared if I lost everything that night. My dad finally admitted the truth. The debt came from bad investments and desperate borrowing to keep up appearances. They chose image over safety. And when it collapsed, they chose me as the sacrifice. That's when the power fully shifted. They weren't asking anymore. They were pleading, promising to fix things, promising to change. But the damage was already done. Trust doesn't survive threats. Love doesn't come with baseball bats. As I stood to leave, my lawyer called. On speaker. He confirmed what I already knew. Charges were moving forward and the bank was cooperating. My family sat there frozen while I walked out, realizing the person they thought was weak had been quietly preparing for this moment the whole time. The fallout came fast, and it came loud. Word spread through the family like wildfire, but this time the story wasn't theirs to control. Neighbors talked. Relatives whispered. Everyone suddenly knew about the police report, the bats, the threats, and the debt that wasn't mine. The same people who once told me to be a good daughter stopped calling completely. Silence replaced pressure, and that silence felt powerful. My brother was charged. Not jailed yet, but restricted, watched, warned. He tried to call me once, voice shaking, saying he didn't mean it, that things went too far. I didn't answer. My parents lost access to credit. Their house went up for sale under court supervision. The image they worked so hard to protect cracked in public, and there was no fixing it with excuses anymore. One afternoon, my mom showed up alone. No shouting. No demands, just regret. She said she never thought I'd stand up like this. That sentence hurt more than the threats. It confirmed what I always knew. They expected me to bend forever. I told her calmly that love doesn't look like fear, and family doesn't come with conditions. She left without arguing because there was nothing left to argue about. Meanwhile, my life changed in quiet ways. I slept through the night. I walked through my house without flinching at every sound. I realized I wasn't just protecting a property, I was protecting my future. The house became more than walls again. It became proof that I could choose myself and survive the backlash. And just when I thought the storm was over, my lawyer sent one final message. The case was moving faster than expected. Evidence was solid. And the court date was set. That's when I understood this. Wasn't just about saying no anymore. It was about ending the cycle once and for all. The court day arrived on a quiet morning. The kind that feels calm only because the storm has already passed. I sat on the wooden bench, hands steady, breathing slow, while my family entered one by one. They looked smaller somehow, not weak, just exposed. The truth has a way of shrinking people who live on lies. My brother avoided my eyes. My parents sat stiff, holding on to each other like they were afraid even the chairs might be taken away. As the judge reviewed the case, every sound felt sharp. The police reports, the audio messages, the screenshots. The neighbor statements about bats hitting my door in the middle of the night. Each piece clicked into place like a lock sealing shut. There was no drama left, no shouting, no emotional speeches, Just facts. Clean. Cold. Final dot. When the judge spoke, it wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Restraining orders were granted. Charges stood. The debt was ruled entirely theirs. My name was cleared. My credit restored. And most importantly, the court confirmed that my house, my safety, was never at risk again. Not legally, not financially, not emotionally. My mother cried quietly. My father stared straight ahead, jaw tight. My brother finally looked at me. And for the first time, there was no anger in his eyes. Just the realization that intimidation had failed. That power had shifted. That the person they tried to break had outgrown them all. I walked out of that courthouse alone, sunlight hitting my face, feeling lighter than I had in years. There was no victory dance, no revenge speech, just peace. The kind that comes when you choose yourself and don't apologize for it. Over the next months, I rebuilt more than silence. I rebuilt boundaries. I changed my locks. I planted a garden in the backyard they once tried to take. I repainted the hallway where I had stood shaking in the dark, turning fear into color. Every small change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. People asked if I missed them, if I felt guilty, if family should be forgiven no matter what. I learned that forgiveness is personal, but access is earned. Love doesn't mean surrender. And blood doesn't give anyone the right to hurt you. One evening, I sat on my porch, watching the sun go down over the house they wanted so badly. The same house they tried to steal with threats and violence. The same house that stood strong. When I finally did, I realized something then. This was never just about a $150,000 debt. It was about control. And they lost it the moment I said no and meant it. I didn't lose my family that night. I lost the illusion that they deserved control over my life. And in return, I gained safety, strength, and a future that belongs only to me. My name is Ashley. I kept my house. I kept my dignity. And I proved that even when fear shows up at your door with baseball bats, courage can still answer without ever opening it.